Welcome everyone to another Observability Lab. Today I'm joined by Catherine. Hi Catherine, so much. Thank you for being here. And you are hopefully explaining to me everything I need to know as a non-expert when it comes to DORA and other compliance frameworks on how Dynatrace can help people to make sure there's no compliance issues that they have, how they can, I think there's a lot of findings and things we can detect in Dynatrace. Sometimes people also tell me sometimes it's overwhelming what type of things we find. So also tell me a little bit about how we help our customers to make sure they are focusing on the right things and not just hunting every single compliance issue. But without further ado, Catherine, maybe you also want to quickly say who you are, what you do at Dynatrace, and then show me what you have.
Yeah, hi Andi. Thanks for having me. So I'm a product manager in Dynatrace here in the business observability team. And in the last year, I've been working to build a strong compliance solution for Dynatrace. So that's the core focus of my job here. And it's been an exciting ride to put together Compliance Assistant, and I'm very excited to be talking about how observability and security can be a really great place to look at compliance use cases as well.
Perfect. Who would you say is the major user and role within an organization that uses a Compliance Assistant?
Well, that's a tricky question. And I think the key with compliance use cases is to understand that so many different teams play a key role, from business operations to compliance teams, legal, and of course, a lot of technical teams, such as site reliability engineers, all need to collaborate together to be able to have a good, strong view across the IT and business landscape to really identify the key signals, identify which processes are the ones that need to be protected, and then, of course, have real-time continuous monitoring on those really important functions within the team.
Cool. Hey, I would say let's jump right into the topic. I see here on the screen the Compliance Assistant app. I see DORA. And for those people that are not familiar, this is the Digital Operations Resiliency Act from the European Union. It does not have anything to do with the DevOps metrics, because this was always my confusion with DORA, because we're using so many acronyms. So today it's about the Digital Operational Resiliency Act. And I will put us on the bigger screen, meaning I'll give a little bit more space for the UI that you're sharing. And can you quickly walk me through how would I use this particular app? What does it show me? How does it work?
Yeah, so Compliance Assistant aims to track, manage, and pull together those core signals that need to be monitored for a specific framework. So today we're looking at DORA, that, as you mentioned, is a resilience and cybersecurity framework. But with the same logic, Dynatrace provides so much value for different compliance requirements when looking at technical rules that need to be implemented. So with Compliance Assistant, one of the first things you can see here on the screen is a compliance snapshot. And that's a key aspect that we provide, is that we have mapped what data you can see in Dynatrace, and we have connected that data to the specific requirements of that regulation. So looking, for example, at DORA, you can see on the top here, classified major incidents, potential major incidents, and other security findings such as vulnerabilities, critical detection findings, and misconfigurations. And the goal here is to give a single pane of glass across those signals tailored to that framework, so that when you open the app, you immediately get a pulse of how you're doing from a compliance perspective, with a score that comes out of the box, trying to give you a real quick feel of whether there's anything serious ongoing that needs further investigation and triaging. And this is a key part for the incident reporting piece that I'll be for sure talking about very soon.
So cool. So if I sum it up, bringing the relevant information and insights to somebody that needs to deal with compliance in an organization. So instead of having to look around in all the different apps that we have for vulnerabilities, for findings, problems, everything is brought into this single place with a nice compliance snapshot. I guess a nice score that we also have here, even though that score for me looks really low, which means probably there's a lot of things to do. I also see the critical or important function, the CIFs, yet another acronym. Can you fill me in what this is all about? Because it looks for me like it's connected somehow to your business objectives as an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we try to bring here is a new concept of looking at compliance with a sort of business-centric mindset. Now, each compliance framework, and I won't bore you with details on how these frameworks work, but what's important to understand is that each framework requires organizations to identify what needs to be protected. So with DORA, financial organizations need to identify critical or important functions that are often called CIFs, right, shortened. And what these functions are pretty much those key business processes in an organization that if there's a disruption, those could really cause significant harm to that organization, its customers, or even looking at the financial market integrity. So those key processes need to be identified, and some examples could be core payment processes, trading engines, even authentication mechanism, anti-money laundering, and so on. Those key business processes that need to be identified and monitored with this specific sort of compliance lens. Mm-hmm. So what we bring with Compliance Assistant is an integration with our business flow functionality, which is Dynatrace's business monitoring solution. So behind each of these tiles you see here, such as deposit and trade flow, there's actually the logic of a business process. So let me just show you quickly that. I'll switch quickly. Perfect. So business flow enables organizations to identify the key business milestones that make up that process, looking at this example here. And with this logic, we can then sort of connect the compliance objective we have in Compliance Assistant, switching back into the app, and have a sort of holistic view into those processes and how it connects with the underlying data in Dynatrace through the business flow logic.
Cool. Wow, that's really, I think for me, this is obviously a major benefit of really understanding what is the real business impact. And obviously, if there's regulations from that, with all the use cases you mentioned, that's very important. But, I'm not in the compliance field, but for me, the biggest benefit of having this data connected with business, it allows me to focus, because there might be many different things that I could tackle right now. But I think knowing what is the business impact and what kind of business functions are currently impacted by a technical problem, a vulnerability, a configuration issue, really helps me to focus on the right things. And I think that's phenomenal that all of this is so well interconnected. I also see here you mentioned it earlier on the top, the classified major incidents, the potential major incidents. So you talk about incidents here. When I hear incidents, I also typically think about incident response. So I would assume there's also a way not just to see this data, obviously in a beautiful app, but we can also then trigger automation. We can connect with other tools, whether it's ticketing systems. Am I correct with this assumption?
Yes. So first of all, one of the key pillars of DORA is to have a strong mechanism to manage incidents, classify them, and report them. So let me walk you through how we are handling this specific requirement in Compliance Assistant. Mm-hmm. So already from the overview page, you can see that we have some potential major incidents. Now, this is very important for a user looking at the app, as these are those incidents that we are flagging automatically as, high risk from a DORA perspective. But of course, it requires then various teams to coordinate and manage those. So let's go into manage all incidents. So in this part of the app, there are 3 tables, and what we're surfacing here are, first of all, what we call unclassified problems. And these are those technical problems which are connected so impacting those critical or important functions we mentioned earlier. So we're looking at technical problems that are impacting our very, very critical processes. So already when they're not classified, this is something that is worth keeping an eye on and monitoring. Now, according to DORA, and this is very, very important, is each incident needs to be assessed in terms of blast radius. So I will take an example here to see this in more concrete terms. So DORA sets out very specific criteria to classify an incident. And classification means that the organization has just a few hours to then report the incident to the authority. So automation is key here to be able to tackle that requirement. Now, if we take this example, you can see the incident is actually closed. Of course, we're looking at the demo incident, so also very worrying that it has been open for more than 2 days. But first of all, you can see which of those critical or important functions are affected. And then you can see 2 of the DORA criteria in context that we populate as the incident is open. So for each of these requirements, you can see that we pull the materiality threshold from DORA and then clarify whether or not that's breached. So potential major incidents are those incidents that have 2 of those criteria breached as defined by DORA, and we bring that forward, enabling then users to assess whether it is really a major incident that needs to be reported. And based on that, they can actually classify it. So let's just say classified, just as an example, in alignment with the compliance team, typos aside. And with this, you can confirm classification and add this comment directly in the snapshot of that incident. Now, we have some loading time here that really shows how in the background, what we're doing is that we're ingesting that snapshot back into Grail with the insights of the technical problem and the compliance incidents visibility with the criteria. We also have the comment I just added. Let's give it a second. So we can see that the incident was classified as major. We can see it now in the classified incidents table. And if we open it, of course, the incident will not be, it won't be possible to classify it anymore, but the comment is there kind of frozen together with all the other core insights as evidence also for transparency and auditing purposes, as this is a key part of compliance as well.
Cool. So if I can recap, and DORA, the framework, basically really specifies what is a major incident, like the economic impact, the time, and also whether business critical functions, where the CIFs, as you call them, the critical important functions, are violated. And we make it super easy. So we bring all of this data to the compliance team and already basically say this is most likely a critical incident because you're violating the incident duration, the economic impact, and you have 1 out of 3 critical functions affected. And then, for me, this seems like this is super helpful because instead of having to run around and trying to figure out whether all of these different dimensions are violated or not, Dynatrace brings it all basically into my on my screen, and I can just then confirm and just classify.
Yeah, exactly. And because we are also ingesting a business event to Grail, you can also use then that event as a trigger, for example, in workflows to integrate with any of the incident management solutions you're already using. So yeah, we try not to build this flow that is tailored to DORA in isolation, but of course it integrates with underlying processes that might already be set up as with incident management. Different teams are working together, and that's really key.
So that means to just name one, for instance, we could automatically use workflows to create a ServiceNow ticket,
exactly,
or update an existing ticket in case something has already been opened before. And update it with the information. This is really great. Cool.
Yeah. Exactly. What I could also show you as another key pillar of DORA is the ICT risk management. So this is a core chapter. So very often people talk about DORA chapters, which is just a section, right, of the regulation, but it reflects a key requirement. And with risk management, there is a need to have continuous real-time monitoring across vulnerability, detection findings, as well as misconfigurations. And the way you can use Compliance Assistant for this is that, first of all, we try to always bring together different teams, independently of whether there's a strong compliance background or they're coming more from the technical side. And we provide the visibility into why that data is relevant for compliance. And also, if you have a strong compliance knowledge, you can understand why these Dynatrace signals are really critical to meet that requirement. And from each of these sort of high-level signals we provide based on severity, you can then open any of the underlying Dynatrace apps for a drill down. So let's take the example of misconfigurations. Now, this brings us to the Security Posture Management app, which provides visibility into any underlying misconfiguration. And for each of these, you can see we have an overview of the results of the configuration rules being checked. And even without a complete understanding, right, of the Security Posture Management app, then you can still open and have a drill down. I had the feeling you were about to ask me something.
Exactly. I think you clicked on the view rule, but the screen hasn't changed. So maybe you need to
Oh, sorry. My bad. Let me just switch. Okay. There you go. So this is what you get when you switch. Yeah, my apologies. So let me go back one step to make sure you're on board. So we're looking now at Security Posture Management, which is a solution in Dynatrace enabling you to monitor configuration rules against a specific compliance framework. So when you open it from Compliance Assistant, you can already see it's filtered by the standard DORA and a list of rules here with the results. And we can see, for example, that this specific minimize access to secrets rule has failed. So from here, even if you are not the team owning and really driving the security posture management initiative, you can still get an understanding of the severity of this finding to reduce noise and prioritize fixing, right, the underlying configuration. And from here, what's very, very valuable is that you can rely on Dynatrace intelligence to understand what that finding really means, what's the priority and impact, and then also what steps can be taken to resolve it, right? So you can see the example here with the explanation of the rule. What's the priority? In this case, it's a critical finding. And what's the impact from a sort of technology perspective, as well as a proposal on how to remediate. Now, this is, very valuable, of course, as we hear over and over that different teams own different parts, right, of the processes that are necessary for compliance monitoring. So this is a good way for teams to be able to communicate, even if they're effectively speaking different languages.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and Dynatrace takes care that all of these rules are always up to date. That means, I guess, these rules obviously come from the regulators, in this case, the European Union, and Dynatrace takes care that all of these rules are always up to date.
Yeah. You can actually directly from this view, you can go into rule details here, and you can see specifically like the source of that requirement, the standard, and how it maps back to specific articles. Mm-hmm. So that's how you can keep sort of have the visibility into really how those rules are built by Dynatrace.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So back into Compliance Assistant, we walked through some of the key features. As I mentioned, the snapshot is really the entry point, but then the underlying logic of the incident and the ICT risk management really tries to pull together those key insights to make sure, right, within different teams you can collaborate, and the cross-functional need for collaboration for compliance is not a hurdle anymore.
Yeah, perfect. And folks, there's obviously a lot of other video recordings we already created for some of the other apps. So if you want to learn more about, for instance, the critical findings from a security perspective, there's also videos for that already. We'll make sure to link them in the description of this video. Now, Catherine, maybe the next question for me, or maybe the last question would be, how does one get started with this? What's the setup? What type of data? Fill me in. How do one get started?
All right. So let's have a look at how the app looks like once you install it for the first time in your environment. So very nice. You can also look at, of course, a short demo of how the app looks like. But most importantly, what you can do is to set up a framework. Now, once you set up the framework, currently we are supporting DORA, but in the future, you'll be able to pick any framework that is applicable to your organization. So let's go ahead and choose DORA. And in the next step, what we're showing are those business flows that you have already configured in Dynatrace, which are configured as entities in Smartscape. And that's very important because the connection to the topology enables us to really connect problems to the processes. So let's go ahead and select, in this case, all three. There might be more flows and more processes that are critical in your organization. And as the last step here, what we're doing is to check what's the current status with your security sources. And here you can see that we try to give context of why specific data is very important to show compliance with that framework. So in this case, we have a perfect setup with all sources enabled, and we can go ahead and save, and that's pretty much it. The app will be loading, and you can start monitoring your compliance.
Cool. Well, that was really easy. So you mentioned other frameworks are coming. As I said, I'm not a compliance expert, but that means we are adding on the one side frameworks that are defined by different government bodies, whether it's in this case the European Union with DORA, and I'm sure the US and other parts of the world have their own frameworks. But you also mentioned potentially any type of framework. You will also be able to then configure this and set up your own framework and your own rules.
Yeah, exactly. So the basic logic and the basic flows I showed for DORA apply very similarly to other frameworks. So the objective is really that of scaling that logic across various frameworks so that different geographies can use the app and benefit from seeing those observability and security signals in context.
Cool. Awesome. Maybe the last question that I now have, the Compliance Assistant is pre-installed for everyone in Dynatrace. You didn't need to go to the hub to install it, but I guess it's pre-installed?
Actually, the app is on demand, so you can go to the hub, look for Compliance Assistant, install it, and then pretty much you go to the step I just showed you with the landing page.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Catherine, anything else from your side? Anything that we've missed?
I think we went through all the core journeys, and really excited to see how users will be using. And of course, all feedback is very welcome. So just a call out there.
Perfect. So folks, if you try the app and if you have feedback, either leave a comment wherever you watch that video or go to community.dynatrace.com. That's obviously the place where we would like to have people ask questions and also give feedback. And Catherine, thank you so much for walking me through this. As I said, I'm not at all an expert when it comes to compliance, but seeing how nicely this data is provided, it really shows me the value that this provides to our customers, because we are taking a lot of the steps that would otherwise be needed to collect all this data, to correlate it, and to then take action. Because clearly, with DORA, the European Union wants to make sure that specifically financial institutions, they stay compliant. They report when they have to report these incidents, and we make this super easy for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.